The best for last. We go back to Chicago, where in minutes the Democratic National Convention gets underway. My dear friend Joy Reid is there, and she joins us. Tell me everything.
I'll tell you everything. I'm going to sum up what I have felt since we landed, Nicole, in this wonderful, beautiful city. Exuberance, joy. I have not, and we were just talking about this a little while ago, I have not seen so many Democrats laugh, smile, sing. I mean, there is a song in the air. I don't know if you can hear me behind me, but there's like a little bit of music playing. People are literally dancing to the tunes in their own head. I think Democrats today, they feel a kind of joy and a kind of relief that I personally have not seen in, like 8 years? You know, it's been a constant slog. And as much as people, I think, adore Joe Biden, they love him. He is beloved in this party. And people were prepared to fight like junkyard dogs to get him over the finish line. There's a sense that it'll be a fight, but it'll be a joyous fight now. It won't be a slog. And I think people are just relieved and happy.
One of the things we were talking about in the break is that the polls now match the political reality in this country. Arizona should be close. She's back in all the margins or ahead in all of the battleground states. She's changing the map as it should be. Talk about the map as only you can.
Right. And you know, I went back and I go into my wormholes. And one of the wormholes I went into is I needed to remind myself, even though I worked on that campaign in the last bits of it, the Obama victory, it was something like 332 electoral college votes. He won Ohio, he won Indiana, he won North Carolina, Florida, and Iowa, states that we barely ever talk about anymore as swing states. But remember, you know this, Nicole, because you were much higher up level in politics than I ever was. Ohio used to be a swing state. We used to say things like, as goes Ohio, goes America. And then we lost that sense that we wrote certain states off as unwinnable, forgetting that Arkansas had a Democratic governor. His name was Bill Clinton. You know, the Tennessee senator that ran with him was Al Gore. He was from Tennessee. And so I think what we've seen and what the Harris-Walz ticket has done, which is remarkable, is it's turned the whole country back into a country where you can have conversations about Arizona as not impossible, and North Carolina as not impossible. Democrats are dreaming now. They're talking about Florida again. They're talking about states that they had written off. And they're doing that because they have a ticket that feels so normal. It feels so approachable.
Joy, what I was going to ask you is, you know, the thing that you learn when you get to the highest levels in politics is that there is no secret, right? The secret is up here. And so the most powerful thing in politics, and President Obama understood this, is that what you're communicating to the country is the possible. What is possible? Talk about how they've bottled that and are handing it out to all. I mean, the Pro-Democracy Coalition added uber-conservative lawyer Judge Michael Luttig today. I mean, they're not just handing it out to Democrats. They're handing it out to everybody who wants to be part of the Pro-Democracy Coalition. Talk about the politics of the possible.
Well, I will tell you, my first text, and this is a true story, and not just because I'm talking to you, my dear friend. My first text this morning was from the young man who is going to be leading Black Republicans for Harris. So he was like, I'm letting you know, I'm putting a group together. I mean, the people who have been the most sort of vociferous about getting into this coalition in the last week or so have been Republicans who've been texting me and saying, I'm part of this because this isn't even about politics anymore. This is about making a statement about who and what America is. And Joe Biden, to his eternal credit, did that in 2020 when he said, enough already with the foolishness and the fear and the terror and the taking babies out of the arms of their moms and the threatening and banning Muslim grandmas from coming to this country. Enough. And America said, you know what? Yeah, enough. And then he did this handoff to someone very similar to him. They're both from working class backgrounds. Joe Biden is the working class Joe that America needed in 2020. And then what he said is that I want to expand that coalition to include a woman of color and to include this coach that's basically like America's high school football coach. And it's so refreshing. And I think you feel that in this room behind me. They're refreshed and they're excited.
ABC News political correspondent, my friend and colleague Jacob Soboroff, on the floor of the convention, who has wrangled a very special VIP.
Nicole says I'm with a very special VIP. Congressman Jamie Raskin is down here. Nicole, it was like the deli counter, as one volunteer said. You have to take a ticket to talk to Congressman Raskin. Everybody wants to say hello to you. How are you, sir? How does it feel to be here?
It feels excellent, and there's such a vibrancy and enthusiasm to this convention. It's extraordinary.
You know, it's no secret that you wrote this letter to President Biden about your desire for him to reconsider his role in the race. You know, this was much publicized. You acknowledged it publicly. How do you feel to be here now in the wake of making that recommendation to him so publicly?
Well, my recommendation, of course, was just for him to talk to everybody about what was going on. And I said, you will make the right decision, as he always does. And so I wasn't trying to put a weight on the scales in either direction, but I just wanted to make sure he was hearing from everybody. We are the party of democracy. We're the people's party, and the people have a role here. You can't imagine anything like that going on in Donald Trump's so-called party, which is really a cult of personality at this point. That's not how they work. It's all top down. The Democratic Party is the party of the people, and we've got mayors and governors and senators and representatives and union leaders and teachers and senior citizens, and everybody's here. This is why it's a remarkable thing. We are really a microcosm of the democracy. In fact, FDR used to call our party the democracy with a capital D. And he'd say, you know, the economic royalists and the plutocrats say, invest in the wealthiest people in America, and some of the wealth will dribble down on everybody else. But the democracy says, invest in the great American working middle class. And that is the doctrine that has carried through historically for our party. We are the party of the people.
Let me read from your letter just a little bit. I do want to talk to you about Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, but you know, you used a baseball analogy, and you said, you know, your situation is tricky because you're both our star pitcher and our manager, but in democracy, as you've shown us more than any other prior president, you're not a manager acting all alone. You're the co-manager along with our great team and our great people. Caucus with the team, Mr. President. Hear them out. You'll make the right decision. Have you spoken to President Biden since this has all become so public?
No, we've not been able to talk about that, but I did see him at the beach, at Rehoboth Beach, very briefly last week. Look.
And he said what?
President Biden, I think, is not only at peace with this decision, I think this decision will become part of his extraordinary legacy, along with the Infrastructure Act, a $1.2 trillion investment in our roads and highways and bridges and ports and airports, and along with the Inflation Reduction Act. This decision is all about showing that part of leadership is investing in new leadership. Part of leadership is creating space and opportunity for other people. That's obviously so distant from Donald Trump's cognitive structure, he couldn't even assimilate that idea, right? He alone can do it. It's all about him. But Joe Biden is teaching us how to be better leaders.
We'll certainly both hear about the legacy that you just described of President Biden and the campaign in the future that Vice President Harris would like. And in fact, we're standing here, Nicole, right under the California delegation, my home state, and yours. What do you want to hear? I know we hope to see Vice President Harris tonight. What are you hoping to hear over the course of the next 4 days from the Vice President?
Well, I've loved everything I've heard from the Vice President so far in this campaign. And I think that I want her to reaffirm what it means to be a democracy and the relationship between democracy and freedom, because without democracy, there's no freedom. The autocrats of the world, like Vladimir Putin and Viktor Orban, are not going to do anything to defend the freedom of the people in their own countries, much less in our country or any other. And the kleptocrats and the plutocrats gathered at Mar-a-Lago, which is their real headquarters, they're not going to do anything to protect the freedom of American women. And the theocrats of MAGA are not going to do anything to protect anybody's freedom or liberty. Your right to read the books that you want and to write the essays that you want and to study what you want. So I think she, better than anybody, has been articulating the relationship between democracy and freedom. And then we are the party of progress. And how are we going to keep the remarkable progress that we've seen under the Biden-Harris administration going in the Harris-Walz administration?
Congressman Raskin, I know Nicole Wallace has a question for you. Nicole, go ahead and I'll relay it to the congressman.
So today, Judge Ludig, who's one of the congressmen in the January 6th Select Committee's key witnesses in that Select Committee investigation, endorsed Vice President Harris, he said, without hesitation. I wonder if he could just speak to the importance in a democracy of the pro-democracy coalition hailing from all sides of the ideological spectrum.
Doug Ludig, one of the key witnesses, as you know, in the January 6th hearings, endorsed this campaign today. The pro-democracy coalition, as Nicole calls it, is coalescing around this campaign. Your reaction to that, your thoughts on that?
Well, look, there used to be two political parties that stood by the Constitution, the rule of law, and democracy. Today, there's one. We really are the party of democracy, or as FDR used to call us, the democracy. We are the democracy against the plutocrats, against the kleptocrats, against the theocrats, everybody who would posit some other form of government. For Donald Trump, it's all about how much money he can make for him and his family when he gets in. The democracy views the government as an instrument for the common good for everybody. How can we use the government to uplift everybody in society? Not just the richest people, they're going to do fine with us, but also for the working class and the poor and the middle class. That's what makes us the democracy.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, it's so great to see you. Thank you. And other people want to take the ticket at the deli counter to speak to Congressman Raskin. Nicole.
Hello to Nicole Wallace.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you much.
Nicole, back to you.
No, Jacob, I have a question for you. Tell me what it feels like. How does Chicago feel? What are you seeing on the ground, and what is the energy like there?
You know, Nicole, it was such a somber, obviously, beginning to the last convention in the wake of the horrific assassination attempt on former President Trump. And it feels entirely different here. I was in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, delegation. And you know what the campaigns think, by the way, about these states based on where they put the delegations. I already showed you California. Let me show you where Pennsylvania is over here. Come right this way. And I told you everybody wants to talk to Congressman Raskin. Take a look. So Pennsylvania is over here. Delaware's over there. There's a sense of excitement. And in Aliquippa, where I was, and actually where Vice President Harris and Governor Walz were over the weekend, people were talking about how they may come to turn out and vote for the first time in a while. And that sort of spirit, that sort of energy is here on the floor. There's an excitement. And you also feel like all of the eyeballs, not just inside this arena, but outside are on it too. And I actually want to show you something cool that I didn't know about. I don't remember seeing it at the Republican convention, but come on, let me show you this. There's something called a boiler room. You probably know more about this than I do, Nicole. It's outside of this arena, but in case anything were to go down, because there is going to be a lot of action here. This phone, kids, this is called a telephone. Mom and Dad had them. The cable connects to the telephone, and when you pick these up outside of this convention hall, someone in the boiler room can speak to people in the individual delegation. So, hot tip to everybody watching us over the course of the next couple nights. If you see people in any of these delegations picking up the old school phone with the curly wire, it means somebody outside in the boiler room for the DNC has got something to say to each delegate in these individual delegations. So I'll be watching that closely, Nicole.
A live shot designed for our children, right? And make my kids watch that. This, boys and girls, is a telephone. Watch Jacob Soboroff and you'll learn something. I love when you walk around for us. I've got one more question for you. Who's got the, not to give away their battleground strategy, but who's in the very front? Who have the very, very best seats?
Okay, so come, right in the front and center right here. So we got Pennsylvania, Delaware.
Yeah.
California front and center, obviously going to be the biggest delegation, the most populous state in the union. Maryland, Nebraska. And remember, Nebraska, Nicole, is home to that 2nd congressional district, where in the case of the dreaded 269 electoral college tie, that 2nd congressional district could be, oh, the phone's ringing. Hold on, Nicole, hang on.
Get it. Who is it?
Hold on. It's still ringing?
Hello?
Jacob Soboroff, MSNBC.
Can I have a pizza? Deep dish?
Hi, are you guys calling?
Pepperoni?
Hold on. Do you need someone? Oh, they hung up. I'm going to get in trouble for crank calls. I'm going to get in trouble for crank calls, and they're going to kick me out of here, Nicole. I got to be careful. But so, yeah, anyway, Nebraska's down front and center because in the case of a tie, that Nebraska delegation is going to come into play and become incredibly important. I think with Vice President Harris now in the race, there are multiple paths to victory, whereas President Biden obviously had Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania as the main targets. But over here, just real quick, and then I'll let you get on with the show. Tennessee, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Oklahoma are down here in front. So says a lot about who the campaign thinks are important. But I have a feeling that a lot will be going on in all these delegations over the course of the next 4 nights, Nicole.
We have been looking at images of Governor Tim Walz, the Democratic vice presidential nominee, technically soon to be, along with his wife, Gwen. He is sitting one seat over from the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff. We also saw Governor Walz and his wife and their kids. Gus and Hope are with them. I think Jacob Soboroff is like trying to nose in over there. Jacob, can we go to you?
Rachel, I'm close enough. Governor, we're live on MSNBC. How you feeling, sir?
We're excited. It's a pretty important night for Democrats tonight to honor Joe Biden, and I think Gwen and I, the kids, are excited to be here.
Could you ever imagine a night like this, to be here and to be with the second gentleman, to be with your wife, and to be potentially on the verge of becoming the next vice president of the United States?
I don't know, doesn't every public school teacher imagine being here? No, it's a privilege, it's an honor, and I can tell you this ticket, feeling that energy, just a privilege.
I'll leave you alone, but you were in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania over the weekend. You feel like you guys are going to take Pennsylvania?
Absolutely. I said the energy out there and to be with those high school kids, to see what that means, exciting.
Governor, thank you very much. Nice to talk to you. Nice to see you as well. Rachel, I think I pulled a muscle trying to do that, but we made it happen.
Well done, Jacob. And by the way, we just got a call from all of the restaurants that still have sneeze guards on their salad bars, and you're barred from all of them. Thank you, Jacob. Well done. Well done. Yeah, he was right over the sneeze guard there. That was so inappropriate and so excellent.
Did you see the staff coming? The staff realized he was live on MSNBC, and it was a train of people coming down to say, hey, how did you get here?
Yes,
Yay,
when
Jacob.
you busted out laughing, is that, did we get bunny ears?
From
Gus?
both of his kids.
Yeah. Wow. Most relatable.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is he just doesn't, he seems, I don't know, he seems pretty unflappable. I've just been so struck by someone who went in a very, very short course of time from a relatively obscure national figure to having the amount of attention that he has had. And I think it says something about the sort of preparation and life's work that he's done before this. Someone who is not, I think, gunning to be in that seat, as Jacob sort of alluded to in that question, how comfortable he seems.
I love his answer when he's getting pressed on, I think the line of questioning was about whether the agenda and the record was too progressive, and he just said, what a monster. Mm-hmm. I mean, he has one-liners that, again, to my earlier
what
point,
a monster.
they just,
kids are fed.
I believe kids should have a full belly to learn. It was a bunch of questions about his record as governor, and he just has, I think, a superpower of shrinking the attacks against him, things that have sort of in past eras left strategists in a room trying to figure out what the talking point is to get back against the attack that might be too liberal. And he just said, oh, what a monster. I think kids should be full to learn.
I've been trying to come up with an analogy, or not an analogy, at least a helpful comparison in terms of what other vice presidential pick is like him. And I'm still on home plate, nowhere near first base. Cannot really come up with anybody who he reminds me of in politics who's ascended, as you say, Chris, this fast, but who also brings these particular kinds of talents to the ticket. I'm not saying he's the best vice presidential nominee that we've ever had in this country. I'm just saying I don't know anybody else who performs quite like he does or who he reminds me of.
You know, maybe the closest, and it's a stretch, you're right, so I will stretch it, is Harry Truman, who had this plain-spoken quality about him. But so did the president he was running with. I mean, Franklin Delano Roosevelt had no problem communicating with anyone. But Harry Truman had that Midwestern, plain-spoken thing. He was not an Ivy Leaguer. He was from this whole other world. And that's kind of the closest I think we have to it. But this is unique. This is someone who we really haven't seen at this level of prominence on the national stage.
Well, part of it too, I have to say, as someone who, no shade on anyone with who are sort of young men or women in a hurry and were, ambitious. I know quite a few of them. Some of the people I love the most in my life. You just didn't get the sense, and this is where I think the Truman comparison is. Tim Walz was not at 18, imagining himself at the DNC giving a presidential speech. Yeah. And there are lots of people in politics who did. And again, no shade. I really mean that. But I think the quality you're identifying there is how distinct that is. That just was very clearly nowhere in the mind of 18, 22, 24-year-old.
He's the only public school teacher in our history who has made it onto a ticket. Lyndon Johnson taught public school for a year and a half. Yeah. But this is the real deal. And it's kind of extraordinary when you think about it. Of all the occupational tracks you could take in this country, and as long as we've had public education, this is the first public school teacher, the first real school teacher to end up on a national ticket. And you don't go into, 20 years of public school teaching with political ambitions. Right. That's not where it begins.
I'll just say, watching Josh Shapiro there, it's not like this is a minority view, but I remember interviewing him as Attorney General in Pennsylvania and thinking it was the same sort of feeling that I had the first time I interviewed Stacey Abrams when she was the minority leader in the Georgia state legislature. It was the first time it was the feeling that I had the first time I saw you interview Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as a congressional candidate on our air. And there are just these people who you recognize, whatever their status is in the party right now, you just realize that there isn't a ceiling for them anyway.
And it's there's something weirdly gratifying about that 2022 race in Pennsylvania, because again, you go through these long periods in the Trump era of vertigo. Nothing matters. It doesn't matter whether you say crazy stuff. It's like structural polarization overrides everything. And then you get a race like that race between Doug Mastriano and Josh Shapiro, where you're like, okay. Let's run the experiment here. It should really matter that this guy is able to communicate as effectively as he does, has the resume, is able to relate to people, and the guy running against him is so extreme and so poor at those things. And it did. It's one of those reminders in the Trump era, one of those elections, and there's been a bunch of them where gravity exists. Yes, it still matters in American politics to try to persuade people, reach out to people that don't agree with you, try to meet them halfway, do all the work of politics still matters. And that race to me was a big
and what he did to Mastriano is one of the political distinctions between the Biden campaign approach and the Harris campaign approach to Trump is that Harris treats Trump the way Shapiro treated Mastriano.
That's very interesting.
She popped him with a pin, and she's rolled out so many, and they all would have been there for Joe Biden too. It's not about who they are and what they would mean for preserving democracy. It's just a sort of a tactical thing. But the Republican endorsements come every single day. And so she is now presenting to the whole country, coming out of her, 4 weeks now, as the coalition candidate. Shapiro ran against Mastriano that way, and he was so ostracized from the political center, by the end, from normal Republicans.
Yeah, it's tactical in terms of how you position yourself, but it is also something about being able to grab that energy and take it away from somebody who's getting attention, getting energy, getting all the cable news attention, getting all the stuff that they're getting because they're being transgressive and crazy. And instead saying, no, we're going to expend our energy and our attention on something that is not crazy, that is practical, and that has cross-party appeal. And it's very hard to do. And you can't necessarily prescribe to somebody how they can do it until you see them do it. But that is what Shapiro did to Mastriano, and it is the way that Harris has punctured Trump in this last few weeks.
Yeah, what's always striking when I watch Shapiro is the thoughtfulness through which he answers questions. You don't exactly know what he's going to say, and it's probably not on a DNC talking point email. No offense to the DNC talking point email. He's speaking in a thoughtful, nuanced, everything's not black and white. He doesn't fear answering questions. That's why I always lean in. And some of the people you mentioned, Rachel, have that same quality. And I was sitting there watching him and thinking, I wrote this down. is that the Doug Burgum of our party? I mean, he was the runner-up, right, for the vice presidential pick, and it just shows you kind of the breadth and the bench of the party. The last thing, and I'm glad Joy raised this, because just watching tonight, the diversity of the faces, the youth in the room, the diversity of people's backgrounds is so striking and different from a couple of weeks ago. And what's also different is the overall message. I mean, Biden and Harris are speaking to the totality of the country, the multicultural, multi-ethnic country we live in, that's diverse with a big umbrella and everybody who's a part of it. And Trump and Vance speak to a tiny, tiny portion of the public. And that's a striking thing. You look at the room, but I think also in the messages we'll hear.
Richard, your first comment after listening to Governor Shapiro was referring to the question of what is their status in the party. Their status in the party as of right now tonight is incredibly valuable campaigners for the Harris-Walz ticket. What this gives you is someone who can campaign for the ticket in Pennsylvania and get attention without the candidates having to be there, which is just as valuable as they can possibly be. You have Raphael Warnock be able to do that in Georgia. You're going to see all of these people over the course of this week where we're just going to be sitting here thinking, okay, 75 days of that guy campaigning in Pennsylvania or wherever their state is for this ticket. Very powerful. I can't think of a more powerful group of surrogate campaign speakers that the Democrats have had. This is really an amazing lineup all across the country.
And you think about, it's a very good point. You think about how Josh Shapiro could sell out a room in lots of places other than Pennsylvania as a speaker on behalf of the Democratic campaign, as can Mark Kelly, as can Raphael Warnock, as can Gretchen Whitmer, as can a number of the people who we're going to hear from tonight. They don't have to be on the ticket. They don't have to be out of the cabinet. But the bench right now is as sort of electric as I've ever seen it in the Democratic Party. And to have that happening, again, in contrast to the Republicans, at the same time that you've got the entire living history of the party all on board, all represented starting tonight. It's an enviable position, I think, for the party in terms of both tonight and for their future. But we're going to see it showcased. Democratic Speaker Nancy Pelosi, after 2 decades as the leader of Democrats in Congress, some people say the most effective Speaker of the House in American history, while she was still very, very much at the height of her powers and influence. Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi chose to retire from Democratic Party leadership in the House to clear the way for a new generation. In her case, for the next Democratic House leader, Hakeem Jeffries of the great state of New York. Leader Jeffries is now standing by with our colleague Alex Wagner in Chicago. Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Rachel. Leader Jeffries, as Rachel points out, the Democratic Party has done some fairly extraordinary things in terms of the lines of succession, if you will. How are you feeling about, the choice President Biden made and what he's going to say on the stage tonight?
Well, it's an honor for us as House Democrats to stand on the shoulders of a legendary leader like Nancy Pelosi, myself along with Catherine Clark and Pete Aguilar and the entire House Democratic Caucus. And we're also, of course, thankful for President Joe Biden, a great American, a heroic American, a patriotic American. He'll go down in American history as one of the most consequential presidents of all time. But he's made this selfless decision to pass the torch to Kamala Harris, who's ready, willing, and able to lead the United States of America. And so we're here to celebrate Joe Biden. We're here to elevate Kamala Harris, and we're here to eradicate MAGA extremism.
For a long time, the old adage was Democrats need to fall in love and Republicans fall in line. That does not seem to be true today. And I wonder if you think what we're looking at is a new, very tactical, strategic, and I won't say cutthroat, but really sort of getting a Democratic Party that places winning and defeating Donald Trump as its paramount objective.
Well, we've recognized that Donald Trump represents an existential threat to America, to our way of life, to democracy, to an economy that we want to build which works for everyday Americans, as opposed to his vision of an economy that works for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. If you look back at the arc over the last several cycles, we took the House back in 2018. We won the presidency in 2020. We took the Senate back in 2020. We overperformed in the midterm elections and won all across the country.
Yeah.
Only narrowly lost the House. We won during the off-year elections in 2023. So we have been, I think, very strategic as it relates to the stakes that exist and the need for us to win, not as Democrats, to win for the American people.
Do you think the House stands a chance of falling back into Democratic hands? Are you ready to pick up the gavel as Speaker of the House?
Well, we're working very hard as House Democrats throughout this Congress. We continue to put people over politics, and we're going to articulate a vision all across the country. We're going to fight to lower costs. We're going to fight to grow the middle class. We're going to fight to defend freedom, in particular, a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions, run through the finish line, put it in the hands of the American people, make sure we elect Kamala Harris as the 47th President of the United States of America, and take back the majority in the House of Representatives.
I noticed you talk about the economy, you talk about abortion, you talk about freedom writ broadly. You did not talk about the shenanigans, which is euphemistic, that the House Republican Conference has been up to. Today, they came out finally with their report, a long time and many dollars in the making, that concludes that President Biden is guilty of impeachable conduct, though they are unable to point to a particular crime or criminal activity, and they are unlikely to hold a vote to impeach the president because they don't actually have the votes. What is your reaction to, A, the release of that report today, and then B, to the sort of bigger picture of how they've been spending their time?
Extreme MAGA Republicans are sad and desperate. This so-called impeachment report is a fake, fraudulent, and fictitious document. There's no evidence that President Biden committed a crime, no evidence of wrongdoing, and no evidence that he engaged in an impeachable offense. This was all about them continuing to bend the knee to Donald Trump, who instructed them to launch this phony impeachment inquiry. They wasted time and taxpayer dollars, and at the end of it, they've produced nothing. And it also represents a cynical effort to try to drop this as if people are going to pay attention on the first day of the Democratic convention. It was an epic fail. Just like their majority throughout this Congress has been an epic fail. It's brought us nothing but chaos, dysfunction, and extremism. We're going to bring joy. We're going to bring hope. We're going to bring change for the American people.
It should be noted, Leader Jeffries, that you also brought a DJ. I think the only Democrat here who had a DJ at one of his parties today celebrating the convention. So many firsts happening here.
Shout out to Brooklyn's own DJ Clark Kent, representing here at the Democratic National Convention.
Brooklyn represent. Back to you in New York, Rachel.
I have a question for you, Kev. It's kind of along those same lines because, people talk about Clinton Democrats. That was the thing in the 90s. There are definitely Obamacrats. We know that those exist. I think people underestimate the extent to which there are Bidenistas. There are Biden Democrats. People really love him. Democrats really love this guy. There are a lot of African-American Democrats very much love Joe Biden. And I think it's partly connected to his relationship with President Barack Obama and the way he stood with him, but also just something about him, right, resonates with a lot of Democrats. So you talked about that mix of kind of sadness and also joy that you're seeing and that you're feeling. Give me what the mix is like, and how much has his blessing of Kamala Harris boosted her with Bidenistas?
Absolutely essential. And Joe Biden knows that. I mean, he knows that he has immense power in this party, as he should. I mean, Joy, he deserves having immense power in this party. And only because he was selfless and stepped aside is she even in a position to challenge Donald Trump. But, our party handled things differently than the Republican Party. In the Republican Party, there was a lot of people that didn't like Donald Trump, didn't think he could win. And guess what? They all folded and became part of the Trump cult. And it is all about him. In our party, there were people that said, no, this is about something bigger than any one person. And the one person who said that loudly by what he did was Joe Biden. And I think that's why his legacy will be legend among American presidents because of the selflessness he's shown over the last month.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? What's better than having one former senator? Two. I'm going to bring in another one. Senator Barbara Boxer of the great state of California, your friend. So we're just bringing all the gals together. Let's talk about that a little bit because, there is this sense that this is a swan song for a really great political career for President Biden, but it's also a handoff. Right. This is like a relay race handoff that he's handing it to this person that was really to the end. Like, she literally defended him to the bitter end after that debate. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship, and then talk a little bit about the former senator from California who is now poised to take the reins of the party, Kamala Harris?
Well, absolutely. First, I want to say hi, Claire, and I love her take on things. I love her take on things. What I want to say is this. When I decided to step away and retire from the Senate, Kamala Harris stepped up. She ran a great race. I endorsed her, and here she is now. So I'm super excited about all of that. It's pretty great. And I also want to say, when history is written, it will say all those great things about President Biden, the things that he did. He brought us back from COVID. He brought the economy back. He fought for the soul of America, but he also endorsed Kamala at a time when a lot of people in my party were saying open convention. And I would just like to say, if it was an open convention, it would have been chaos. So I think when history is written, he will get so many great marks for that. Look, he feels toward her so close because she was close with his son who passed away from cancer. And I think he felt that connection to Bo. So it's a warm, everlasting relationship.
Senator Ari Melber here. Good to see you again. I should say Senator Boxer, to be clear. When we look at the gender dynamics here, with the Walz pick and a lot of the way Harris has been campaigning, it's been inclusive in the best sense. We've talked and joked about the identity politics, the camo hats, all of that. But it still matters a lot, as with Hillary Clinton taking the stage tonight. Hillary Clinton did show mathematically that she ran for president and more people voted for the woman than the man that year. We just have this whole electoral college thing on the side that someday we might deal with. What does it say to you in that bridge that, and Joy Reid was talking about this at the beginning of the broadcast, that Biden was a bridge from the diversity of the Obama era, then coming out of Clinton with whom he served? She speaks tonight, and he's passing the torch to what could be, if she wins, the first woman president, first woman of color president. Where does that all fit into some of the speakers we're going to hear from?
Well, first of all, you said something about Joe that a lot of people don't remember, that he stepped aside for Hillary when she ran. And now he's embracing a woman of color, his vice president. It's so exciting. I hope I can say this about the men who are listening to us. You know, confident men will vote for Kamala Harris. Step out there, show that. And I remember when I ran for office, I didn't get the men's vote. But I got a lot of men's votes, and I had a button that said, real men vote for Barbara Boxer. So I think this is a test, you guys out there. Join us. It's about you. It's about your freedoms. It's about your democracy. It's about whether we have an economy that works for everyone, not just the billionaires who, you know, Trump just loves to kiss their feet and everything else.